Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Grow Yourself from the Inside Out. Thank you again so much for being here with us today. And listen, so several years ago, it's coming up on 10 years, that I wrote and published a book. It's called The Gap Between Two Worlds. And I know several of you have read it. It has to do with major life transitions. And, you know, the short story is that when I retired my career from the Air Force, I got out, moved from California here with Jane and our two girls, and decided to start a business. And it over the course of the year, it started going south because I thought somehow in my mind that I could get a business up and running in 6 months. I don't know exactly what I was thinking then, but obviously I didn't know. And so then over the course of that time, nearing more of a year, we were running out of money, running out of time. I had my mouse on on monster.com looking for a job at the same time, trying to build a business. And I ended up going into a pretty serious depression, and it took a good minute to end up getting out of that. And finally, out of that came the book, and I did eventually make the shift, if you will, and started to pursue life in a different kind of way. So, that's my story. I mean, that's part of my story. It's obviously not the full story. And if you were here last time, my last two guests, they had different stories. One story was about a woman who hated herself and had to figure out how to love herself. And then the guest after that was a person who didn't know how to love other people, his wife, his kids. And so, that was their story. And we all have a story. You have a story. We all have a story. But here's the thing, whatever the story is, it's not the full story. In fact, if you're here tonight or later on watching the show or listening to the podcast, if you're there, if you're here, then there's the rest of the story. The question, and my guest has many, many stories, as most of us do throughout our life. Actually, what's very interesting about my guest, and a little bit different than most stories, is she actually helped produce stories for Hollywood and around the world. I'll read her bio in just a moment, but here's the thing: she helped produce stories, movies, if you will, but those weren't her stories. You see, she had her own story, and ironically, she didn't write her story, and she didn't get to determine her role in the story. The story was written for her, and she had to play whatever role she showed up with. And that's very, very ironic. So when the time came, though, later in her life, when she grew up, that she could do her own story, write her own movie, produce her own show, she wrote the wrong one. And it was one that she later realized, was written from bad scripts, if you will. And she'll clarify this more. It'll all make sense. And so, like a lot of bad endings, though, if you will, ending of a movie, there you are. You're laying in the street, you're beat up, and you're asking yourself, what the hell is going on here? What am I doing? Where am I going? Who am I? And what do I do about all of this? So then, at some point, if you are lucky, if you're blessed, you have this road to Damascus experience. And the light blinds you so harshly, it's so much in your face that you have no choice but to pay attention to what's going on. And that's when you realize that there's another life, a better life, and that there is a story, a movie that you can write, that you can produce, and that you get to pick the role. And this is kind of the story that will be clarified in a moment by my guest, Lillian Victoria. She's a very interesting person. She comes from us live from LA. And so Lillian is a former executive entertainment executive turned peak performance coach with 15 years of experience. She helps entrepreneurs around the world see a clear path to their goals, turn their ideas into reality, and maximize their potential, and set a secure foundation for a happy, healthy, and prosperous lifestyle. Now, in her previous life as an entertainment executive, Lillian worked in a wide variety of international film projects and in association with leading global talents across the world. In working with A-list Hollywood talent, she observed their characteristics and the patterns that made them successful. So now she uses these insights to help others succeed. In fact, Lillian is on a mission. She's on a mission to awaken people to their own director, lead actor, producer in their own life movie. But there's a twist, as I sort of led into with it. And the twist is that there's a twist to, I should say, her insight and her success in doing so. And that is, at the age of 35, she lost everything. She lost her marriage, she lost her career, and she didn't know who she was anymore. And as a previous, if you will, entertainment executive, she found herself in this rat race. And this is the story I was talking about. And living an ego-driven life. She was being defined by the projects she was working on or the people she was associated with. She realized she was dead in the ashes when she couldn't answer the question, who am I? And that's when everything in her life started to shift. So in 2018, that's the year when she lost everything. And she thought she was, and she lost everything that she thought she was. And so she decided to embark on a new journey, a fresh start in life. The experience was traumatic, but the beauty was she walked away from the environments that were not aligned with who she was or who she wanted to be. So Lillian is the founder of the Awesomeness Lifestyle with the mission of changing lives on a global level. Ladies and gentlemen, just even in your mind, give a big round of applause and welcome Lillian Victoria. Can you hear the applaud?
Yeah, thank you so much for this beautiful intro.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Your life is fascinating, and as I said, we all have stories, but your story is really one of, as with some of the other guests I have, you had some struggles, but you turned it around. And this whole concept of you writing your own life story and producing it and directing it and then appearing it is so fascinating. And so, Lillian, just tell everybody who you are. Who is Lillian Victoria? By the way, if I call you Victory, because
I know, I love it.
I'm just like, that's the right word for her, but it is Victoria.
Thank
So
you.
who are you?
I'll take it all. I'll take on
Okay.
So you did such a beautiful job introducing me. In my words, my name is Lillian Victoria. So I am a speaker. I am a peak performance coach with 15 years of entertainment experience. And I am on a mission. I am on a mission to create positive impact and awakening to people around the world. And, and I love what you said. The blessing that I had in my life is I broke down. I had to lose everything. But that gave me the opportunity to rebuild a life with my meaning, my purpose, that is in alignment with my soul. So during the time was extremely challenging. It was very difficult, but it really gave it gave me the opportunity to rebuild a foundation.
It's a very fascinating. That's a very important point. Would you share just a little bit about your upbringing? Where were you? Where were you born? Where did you live? And how? Just to share a little bit about your upbringing.
So, born in Los Angeles, I was raised by a single mom with 2 kids. So I'm the oldest. We went from wealthy to struggling pretty quickly. Once my parents got a divorce, raised us in, we were living in a motel. We're on government food stamps, and she was emotionally and physically unavailable. And I think that was really important because when I lost everything, You talked about earlier with your beautiful intro, depression. I got into that because I have a son. And immediately, the only definition and the belief and experience I had when I associate this word single mom is how I was raised. So when I
Wow.
lost everything, the scariest part was me becoming a struggling single mom. Me, have to figure out where I'm going to, and having so much fear that I wasn't going to be able to make through. But that being said, with that came desire, right? The desire to rebuild my life because of my son, because I want to provide him a better life, because I know somewhere deep inside that I am able, and I was in a hole that I just had to get out. And, I know you said earlier how I turned it around really quickly. There was one defining moment, and this is a moment that I'll never forget in my life, never. When I lost everything, there was one whole year I was couch surfing. I was staying with this friend for a while, that friend a while. Like I went to 4 different friends' places because I had
That's
no idea
tough.
where I'm heading towards. And this one transition, I was staying at my friend's place in Hollywood. She lived in an older apartment, right? And I was sitting there, and my son was there, and he looked at me because I was just like sad. I was in deep thoughts, and I was sad because I'm trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And he just looked at me. He's like, "Mommy, are you okay?" And
Wow.
I looked at him and I said, "You know what? Everything is gonna be okay. Mommy just fell really hard, but I'm going to get back up." I've been teaching
Wow.
him that since whenever he tried to scoop, right? I was like, "You get back up. You get back up." So that was the moment, because in that moment, I made a promise and a decision to not just myself, but to him too, that A, mommy's going to get back up, and B, I am not my mom. I am not the past. I'm going to create something. And when I mean create, I mean my story, my movie, my version, what I want, and that was the first step for me walking away from fear. That was the first step. Came many,
Okay.
many more steps.
Wow. And so, when you're in this situation, and I think what's very important, and this has been the theme from the last couple of guests that I've had, is that, when you grow up in certain circumstances, you don't know what you don't know. You arrive here, and as you just articulated, you just go, man, I don't want to be what I've seen. There's something's got to be different. I've got to do something different, right? And in this case, it seems like, at least from the beginning, your son was a motivation behind, turning it around, right?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. He was my burning desire, right, to be
Right.
better. And I would say, I think you're a dad yourself. I would say that for a lot of parents, that's all of our desire, to be the role model, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and I think another thing, throughout this experience, and you mentioned this earlier, is the turning point for me when I knew everything was not working out and I had to change completely. Like I really had to kill the past, the old me, to create this new.
Interesting.
Is when I didn't know who I am. It's such a simple question. I didn't know who I am since my ex-husband left.
Yeah.
I didn't know who I am now that at that time I wasn't working. I didn't know who I am, given that I was confused in which industry I should be in at the time, and thinking, and in my mind thinking, oh my goodness, do I have to go and get my MBA or something? I'm so old, right? The only thing I knew at that time, with the new status change, was I was walking in to become a single mom. And that scared me. And I really didn't like that I am a single mom label. Right.
Wow.
So that's the defining moment. And that's when I really start to soul search, deep search, look into my source. So who am I then? What is my purpose? What's gonna create excitement in my life. What am I here for? Why did God bring me to this planet, to this earth? What am I here to serve? And that was the
Wow.
beginning of the journey.
Wow, that's really powerful stuff, you know. And so then what? So you did you just begin to, you know, I mean, where do you start from there? If you've lost it all and you're asking yourself this question, you're standing in the middle of this big old desert, empty desert, and you're doing a 360 and you're like, who am I? I'm not sure. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know which way to go. How did you pick a way to go? How did you decide, okay, I'm going to go this way?
So I'll be honest with you, I got help.
No. Oh, well,
I got
there's
help.
there's a concept.
I asked for help. I got help because
Wow.
here's the truth, right? I've been to therapy for years, 2, 3 years. I was working on a lot of my past issues in therapy
Hmm.
um, throughout the whole time, and I have learned that if you need help, go ask for it. There's nothing to be ashamed of it.
That's right.
But the difference that I have learned, so I've always been very into personal help and personal development.
Hmm.
And the only books I would buy with my own money that's not work related, it has all been personal development books, right? And so I knew I had a passion for that. And I would go to therapy because that was my way of investing in myself. The difference is when I was going to therapy, I was talking about my problems. I was talking about the past.
Very
And I
interesting.
realized the more problems I talk about, I stay there. You know, when I was going through that, the everything, I literally, my mind was not functioning right because I was so, depressed, anxiety, keep thinking about the crazy narratives in my head, right? And then my
This
doctor
is
would give me
fascinating.
like Prozacs and Xanax and, just so I could like
Just
stay
function.
afloat, I could
Yeah.
function. And but the thing is, at one point, I'm like, but this is not moving me forward. The reason I was stuck for so long, the reason I was stuck because I didn't have anyone to guide me on what do I want next. People were asking me, so what's next for you? I was like, I don't know. I really don't know, and I need to figure it out. So that's when I got help. I did research, and by then, here's a few things I know. My belief system wasn't working,
Mm.
right?
What do you
Who I
mean?
was
What do you mean it wasn't working?
at that time,
Yeah.
I
You
was
mean the things that you believed were not working? Is that what you meant?
I was operating from fear.
Oh, got
I've
it.
operated from fear my whole life. That was in my belief system. And that was not working. I
Mm.
cannot operate from fear anymore. I cannot operate and make decisions from fear. It's got me nowhere. I made decisions from a lot of projects, a lot of job opportunities. I made decision from that when I walked into my first marriage because I
Mm.
thought I was gonna get too old and I can't find someone and it's the time to get married,
Wow.
right? So
And no, that's a very, very sharp point right there because you're illustrating what maybe many of us do. Because you could take a situation like that, say, well, I mean, if we drilled it down, we would say, okay, that's an act, that's acting out of fear. But some would rationalize it and just say, well, I mean, listen, I mean, I'm getting old, and there's going to be a point where I can't find anybody, so I need to do it. But if you ask a person that is talking like that, what are you so afraid of? It brings up a different notion that you recognize it's not like this acute fear thing that happens to you when you're something traumatic's about to happen, but it's a more subtle type of fear, isn't it?
yeah, it's a programming, it's a belief in their
Yeah.
subconscious mind. And
Very
you just
interesting.
said something, if people think about it, they're like, oh, what if I don't find someone? Then the question is, what if you do find someone? How come we're not thinking about that? Right?
Yes.
I wasn't thinking about that. I was so worried about
Wow.
not being able to get married because I was taught that if I don't get married before my 30s, then I'm a leftover woman. That's a saying in the Chinese
Wow.
culture.
Is
Yeah,
no kidding. That's
it's a saying.
fascinating.
And um, so that was the first shift, right? Even though my intuition at the beginning was like, no, you really shouldn't walk into this. I made a decision against my own intuition because of fear,
Your
and
gut.
also because
Yeah.
of lack of self-trust.
Yeah.
That's why I never listened to my intuition in the past, but now I do. Even when things make no sense, I listen to that intuition. Yeah.
That's a real thing. I mean, listen, I get that. And there's a distinction, right, between making a decision based on emotion versus on gut or intuition, right? That's a different thing.
Huge, huge difference. And thanks for bringing up the emotion part. What I learned too is, making decision is a very big deal for me, because before I never really, even though I was in a position of a decision maker, so at the outside I'm a decision maker, but inside I didn't really know how to make my own decisions because I was always worried, what if I make the wrong one? Right? That goes very deep. That's because I don't trust myself. But it's allowing yourself to make these decisions based on you, what you believe it's right. And then it's
Yeah.
okay if that decision didn't turn out to be the right thing, just make another
Yeah.
decision and get back. But being able to make that decision is really healthy for your mental health, because when people are indecisive, there's three things. One, they're in a mental war. It's not good for your mental health. Two, you're coming from a place of fear and procrastination. Again, you're not trusting yourself. Three, the most important thing, this is the primary cause, is your low self-esteem. We call that self-image, right? Low self-image. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to make those decisions. So
Wow.
it's the art of understanding how everything is connected, everything that we are doing on the outside, and that whole pathway and the process connecting to our source of who I am, who you are, and how you identify that, and how you're grounded to that. As in,
Lillian, somebody commented, Rick commented, he said, I am there now. What's next for my relationship? Divorce is traumatic. So, in that situation, and I can only imagine that you experienced this, that the trauma of divorce, right?
yeah,
Where does one start? How does one just kind of get their head together and
yeah.
and then start to make, how does somebody know that they're making decisions out of fear? How do you settle down and make honest, rational decisions and then start the step? I mean, do you have some thoughts about that? I asked a lot of
Yeah,
questions at
I
one
do.
time, but
You know what? When I went through that and when I was in that hole and I couldn't get out, the one thing that got me out was to focus on the life that I want. That
wow,
included my relationship with my ex-husband. So when I was
wow,
going through this, I was in the middle of a divorce.
mm.
It's traumatic. It's extremely emotional because it's like this. You get the lawyers
Sucks the
involved,
energy out of you, doesn't it?
it sucks the energy out. And what I didn't want is to go through a legal battle, because I don't believe any good is going to come out from it. I truly believe when you go to court, the only person that's going to win are the lawyers.
Boom.
I truly believe that. And you and I
That's
both,
100% correct.
right? No one's going to win.
Nobody's going
And
to win.
it's going to drag. And, money is energy. So wherever you put the money,
Mm-hmm.
if it's the lawyers, then you're sending so much energy
Mm-hmm.
into fighting. I
Yeah.
don't, I'm tired. But focus on what you want. So how I did it, to get unstuck, the first thing was I got very clear with help on the life that I wanted, all area. And this includes how I show up as a mother to my son. This includes my relationship with my ex-husband. This includes the house I want to live. This includes the legacy that I'm building for myself.
Wow.
And once I saw that and I saw the big picture, and I was thinking very big, by the way. The beautiful thing about just being able to fantasize and use your imagination and just think about the life that you want to create, because you have nothing to lose anymore, but you have everything to gain, is to think so big. Because once I start to think so big and I see it very clearly, and I'm like in character. This is when the filmmaking comes in. I'm in character, right? All of a sudden, all the divorce that becomes distance. So everything that I explain, I use the filmmaking technique. I start to write my own story.
I saw that about you, and that's fascinating. Such a great idea, and I want to attach this because I want to hear more about this. Maybe for others, even who are struggling with this. I mean, the divorce rate in this country is so out of whack that we recognize things like the impact that it has on our own being, but also on the kids and the 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 incredible trauma that it can bring to our life. But the idea that you're talking about, how do you begin to reimagine that? They took and messed up that term. How do you imagine a new life in the midst of trauma and
Yeah.
like in my book, I talk about the gap between two worlds, and I'll say this very briefly, but I'd love for you to pick up on it. So the old world and the new world, and then there's the gap in between, and the gap is often represented by mostly, I mean, there's logistical things like, okay, I'm getting a divorce and I got to move. So where do I move? How do I
Yeah.
get a house? I mean, just sort of the practical things. But most of it is filled with psychological disorientation, negativity, self-esteem, trauma, fear, all of these sorts of things. So then how does somebody begin to envision a new world in the midst of all of it? And you kind of feel like, well, I need to wait a year for things to settle down, but you don't have a year, right?
No, I
What do you
didn't.
do?
So first of all, I changed my environment
Oh,
completely. I
interesting.
changed my environment. My mom is in Taiwan. I didn't have any family here, so and I didn't have a place, right? So I went to go visit her for the summer to stay with her. So I took myself completely out of the environment.
Mm.
And I have learned when I'm the most efficient, most productive is when I'm most relaxed. And that goes for everyone. Working under, I was programmed, my old program,
Mm.
my belief was I have to work long hours. I have to be stressed out or else I'm not worthy of my job. But the
Mm.
truth is, when we're operating on that and that kind of energy and frequency, you're not getting the best results. Versus
Mm.
when you're calm, when you're relaxed, when you're connected with who you are, it'll take 2 hours and could get things done. And it's very productive. So what I did is I took myself complete out the environment because when I'm in the environment, which at the time was Los Angeles, there was a lot of noise.
Phew. Goodness.
And those noise are invisible noise that was in my head.
Mm.
I went as far as I'm following people on my social media. They did nothing to me, by the way.
Yeah,
It's for
I get
my
it.
own sanity, maybe
Yeah.
something that brought memory, right?
Mm.
And I put all my energy with help, you know, to move me forward so I can look at, okay, what I'm doing and also start to surround myself with my mastermind, with a group of people that are doing the same things. And that's when things start to change because the energy starts to change, the environments start to change. My mission in life, my desire to change was there, and I'm taking those actions. So that's when things start to happen, right? And I follow the program. I'm not gonna lie to you, like I didn't do
Oh,
this all my.
please. No,
I
please.
follow the program, and basically learning everything about how our mind works. And now I understand you know, how this works. Have you seen this before? It's a
I
stick
don't think
figure
so.
by Dr. Lumen Fleet. No? So
Mm-mm.
I'll just give you a really quick breakdown how this really helped me. And
Please.
I teach this. So this is the mind. This is the five senses. This is the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and this is the body. And if you notice this, the body is much smaller than the mind because our mind is in control. Everything is in our mind, right? The see, hear, smell, taste, touch is what we receive from the news, the outside world, whatever that we see, that is the outside environment. And it'll go through us. Without the awareness, how to use our conscious mind, which is our thinking mind, where we could accept and reject ideas, right? Where our mental faculty lays in and knowing how to use that, it goes straight into our subconscious. So when I was going through that,
Interesting.
my divorce, and I didn't know how
Yeah.
to use this, and in my subconscious, my paradigm is there. So my habit of thinking and my belief. So when I realized that I'm getting the divorce, when I'm getting those emails from the lawyers, that comes in here, goes straight into my subconscious mind because I didn't know how to accept and reject
Yeah.
it.
Which will run your life if you let it, correct?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah,
subconscious mind.
exactly.
I mean,
And
that's the autopilot.
that's the autopilot. And how you change it, there's many different ways, but one of the ways to change it that's so important is understanding the thinking mind, the conscious mind. You have these things called the mental faculties. So when I say use your imagination and think about the life that you want to create, that you want to live, that's in our conscious mind. Intuition, that's in our heart, that's in our conscious and subconscious. Memory, reasoning, willpower, they're all in here. Perception, they're all in the conscious mind. So once you understand how to use those, when we go through these feelings and you have the awareness, you know exactly where it's coming from. And then I just ask myself, is this in alignment with who I am? No, boop, out the window. And the beautiful thing about that, I just have to share this. This is so powerful. That changed my
Please.
life. The beautiful thing about that is once you understand how that works, other people's opinions start to get very, very small. It really doesn't matter. I went from everyone's opinion being so loud, taking over my life, to it doesn't even get into my head anymore. It becomes so distant because I'm so focused with putting the puzzle together with the life that I am creating right now. And that's how you move forward.
Lillian, I talk about this stuff. I've written about this stuff in my book. I have never heard it like you just put it. It makes so sense. Maybe it's because I'm a guy, but the first thing I thought, all those things in your conscious minds, those are tools, right? And I need my imagination tool right now. Or I need my logical, my rational tool or my reasoning tool. And you start to to your point, what is so powerful about what you're saying is that you realize these tools are there now and you can look at them and go, okay, which one do I need here? Do I need to, if I'm thinking about a new life, well, maybe you start with the imagination tool, correct? And you start to
Yeah.
think about it, and then maybe later you say, okay, here I'm working with my imagination, but then I also need to put in some logic and reason here to suggest that maybe I have to put some time frame, and now this is powerful. Now thinking about the imagination tool, talk about this whole thing about your filmmaking techniques. I think this is fascinating. And
Yeah.
as soon as I saw it, I got it, and I want everybody else to get it.
Thank you. So, okay, so every filmmaker that I've worked with, right? I've worked with some Academy Award-winning filmmakers. So I've worked with it all.
The
Right?
best, yeah.
And the one thing in that business is you see something in your mind, you put it on paper, and we go into production and we make it. So when you use your imagination, and this is so cool, when you use your imagination, I want you to be your own writer, director, and lead actor. And just be self-care. I like to use the word self-care because, I was taught not to be selfish, and selfish has negative energy associated to it. So be self-care. Love yourself more. What do you want in life? Not what your ex-wife, ex-husband, your spouse or your kids or your parents or the people around you. It's like, what do you want? Because when you're you're truly free. Right? What inspires you? And start writing them out. This is your story.
Literally writing it, you're saying though.
Literally. Oh,
I
mine
agree
is
with that.
like a script.
Yeah,
Pretty much
yeah.
to write it out. And the more you write, the more you get clarity, right? The more clear you are, our mind operates in mental images. The more clear you are, you know where you're heading towards. And then this whole process becomes very simple. When people don't know their future, like what they want, they're just wandering around or hoping and dreaming and wishing, right? And there's no definite direction. I always say we have a human GPS. G as in our goal, P paradigm, as self-image. You have to have your goal, your vision, where you're heading towards, right? And once we know where you're heading towards, we can start changing those beliefs with our mental faculties that I just shared with you. You know, so for example, when I was so worried and scared about being a single mom and not being able to make it and not being able to um, raise my son the way I want to, that was all programmed in my subconscious mind.
Yeah.
I used my imagination to change that narrative. I was saying, actually, I can be very successful and be a single mom. I reason
Wow.
myself, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to try A, B, C, D. This requires thinking into results, a lot of thinking, right? And I completely change that perception and that narrative. And I start to see myself from the future Lillian too. And I start to see myself on how God will look at me. The future Lillian will look at me, right? How would Tony Robbins or Bob Proctor, how would they advise me? So that's when I'm starting to change my perception.
Wow.
And all this becomes very real.
Yeah.
And then willpower, right?
Yeah.
Because all of this, it's always easier said than done because it's walking that walk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's also in our mental faculty.
That's right.
Because I
But
have that. Yeah, go on.
no, please.
I was going to say, because I have that clear image of what I'm doing in my life, you know, the willpower is to stick to that picture every day. I stick to it. And I
Yeah.
know when I do that, I am
Yes.
going to get there.
That's right. And to your point that because I think about even my circumstance when I was transitioning from the Air Force to the private sector. You know, I I'll just say very briefly, I grew up in a military family, a very military family. I traveled around the world, and then I spent 20 years in the Air Force. And by the time I got out, I had no concept of what the private sector looked like. I mean, I was like, I didn't even know what the term is, and I'm a soft skills coach and I didn't even know what the term human resources was. We didn't use that in the military. And people would talk about human resources, man, like, what are you all talking about? And so the point is that I had no concept. I had no real, no paradigm to operate from. I had no context to operate from. So when I started to shape my vision, if you will, I came to this realization that at least at first it did not have to be 100% crystal clear, but I needed enough to give me direction. And
Yeah.
to your point, the more I moved towards it, the clearer it got.
Yes.
But the other part is the more my energy and my motivation went up because it's kind of like you're on this long hike and you can finally see the finish line and suddenly you've got this new burst of energy and you're like, okay, I'm taking off, man.
Yes.
Right?
I just
It's
got
the
chills when I was listening to you. Yeah, 100%. 100%. You
But you
know,
don't feel that when you're in the rut, when everything is down. You're like your mind is just defeating you.
yeah.
So you
So
take these little steps, right? These little things that you're talking about here.
1% every day. Just
One
1%. Just
percent.
do 1% better than yourself every yesterday. And that's it. 365 days, that's 365%. Make it very easy. But when you start, because how you describe it was just you hit the bullseye. To get out of that rut and to be able to inspire yourself is think about that thing that you always wanted to do, you've never done, that scares you but excites you. You get that butterfly and think bigger, bigger that it's for you to grow into. So we're growing into it day by
Yeah.
day.
Man, there's so
And
much to
that's
digest here. So let's just say somebody is listening now or somebody in the future will listen to this and they are deep in the rut. They feel like crap. They have no energy. They have no vision. They have no desire, willingness to even just get off the couch. So the first step is to seek help, right? Maybe
Yeah.
that and change, and maybe that's part of changing the environment, but get somebody to help draw out from you some different thinking to give you some energy. I'm just trying to say, what about that person that's just deep in the rut right now? Is that it?
Yeah. If the first question I would ask, if you're listening, you feel that way, do I want to change? Because that's the first step. No one.
Mm,
This is the one thing that I've learned. You can never change anyone but yourself.
mm, right.
The moment that I realized I had to change myself, and I yanked myself out of the comfort zone, it was a 180 for me, was because I realized my friends weren't going to do it for me. My mom's not going to do it for me. I got to do it for
I mean, they can
myself.
cheer you on, you
They can
know.
cheer me on, but I got to do it for
You got
myself.
to do it.
And
Yeah.
the most beautiful thing is being able to wake up and being inspired by yourself every day. Now that's what I call living life. I used to get paid really well as an entertainment executive, and I can't get out of bed. Right? Money is important to us, but you don't want to be a slave for money. You want to use money as your tool. I was that person that was slaving for money,
A
right?
lot of people are still.
A lot of people are.
People
And it's
even
making that
bragging.
decision and
Mm.
having the courage to walk away. I'm not saying quit your jobs.
I get it. Yeah.
I'm saying walk away from that version that is not working and then walk into that new version, into life that you really want, because that's going to create a huge shift, right? For me, what happened was when I started to walk on that, my environment started to change. The people, I had old friends that reached out to me out of the blue. They saw what I was doing and they're very intrigued and love it, and we're in such alignment. There are people that I thought was going to be by my side. They're just no longer there. And I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
now grown to
Yeah.
learn that
Yeah.
God, the universe, put people into your life in a
Yes.
certain time
That's
for a
right.
reason, and just surrender.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so beautifully stated. I would like to. There was one thing that was sort of right in the back of my head, and you really did address it, but I want to bring it up in a different way too. That, in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, Dr. Stephen Covey, the late great, his habit number one was to be proactive. I think I might have even said this in my last podcast, so forgive me, everybody, if you're hearing the same thing. But it's a huge point, and his point about being proactive wasn't just like doing things ahead of time or thinking about stepping into it. His point really was about taking 100% accountability for who you are and what you need to do. And you're saying that. You're
Yeah.
right. To have the willpower and the desire, you have to say, okay, you could say, yeah, people put me in this screwed up predicament, whatever, but now I own it now. I got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just said a key word. Accountability is insurance to success.
Mm.
That's why it's okay to hire help. Like, that's what I
Mm.
did. I was like not in a position to, but I needed to invest in myself to make myself
Invest.
feel worthy. That was the first step. I also knew at the time, this changed my whole view on how I look at money, because before I was a saver, and even though I say it, I felt broke, spiritually broke. But now it's just, I just allow it, because I understand money is energy, right? Using it in a beautiful way. I look at tithing completely different now. It's
Mm.
it's really surrendering to the universe and allowing the universe to do its work. Versus before, when I say tithing, I'm like, oh my god, I'm just giving it to church. I want to give it to people that needs it, not just church. But everything
Right.
really changed. And when I asked for help, because I realized that
Yeah.
if I don't, what's going to happen in the next 3 months? I'm
Yeah.
going to be in the same spot.
Yeah.
I need to move, and I'm going to spend this money anyways. I
Yeah.
need to move forward, because if I move forward and I use my potential and my belief change, right?
Yeah.
Think about all the possibilities that I can start to create.
Yeah.
then I could start
Wow.
earning more and I could provide more. So that was the
Yeah.
biggest shift. And main reason why is because I used to procrastinate like crazy. I have all these ideas and I don't get it done. But I
Mm.
needed the accountability and to change that habit for myself first. And once that habit is changed, we're creatures of habits, right?
Yes.
And I keep myself accountable. I have my daily routine, then I keep going. And that's what I do now because I love the transformation, not just for myself, but for the community that I have as well. So
Yes.
it's growing,
Yes.
rising, and
Yes. You
growing.
know, I will say, and I want to ask you momentarily about a worthy goal to create a life
Yeah,
of harmony. But before I do that, I just want to say one thing about the whole tithing thing because,
yeah,
you know, we tithe, uh, and there, you know, there are, I guess, depending on your circumstances in life, you question the tithing, but you know, tithing goes, in my way of thinking, it goes, and maybe this is what in part you're saying, but it goes beyond just giving to church and giving to whatever their missions might be, but they're but it's the giving part.
yes,
It means something. It's you know where in fact I used to, you know, when we tithe, or if there's somebody, you know, there's a guy that stands on the corner down the street from me here, you know, begging for money. He's been doing this for 3 years. He dresses quite well. And it took me a while to stop judging this guy. I was like, I'm not giving this guy any money. He's making a thing out of it. But I realized about giving, and I would say the same about tithing. I used to be like, well, okay, where's this money going? I mean, are you just like collecting a paycheck here, or something like this? And it was just such a warped way in my what I've learned of thinking about giving or tithing,
yeah,
that it's the, now again, in my case, and it sounds like in your case, you know, I believe in God, and that God asks us to tithe, and when you give of that money, He will do what needs to be done. So from your standpoint, it's just give it, and then it's out of your hands. You see, so there's a whole thing that goes on in your head about giving.
yeah. The way I look at it is it ties into a mental attitude,
There you go.
right? It ties into the attitude that for me, it's this process of giving and receiving. So being able to give, to trust the universe, and then knowing that the universe is going to provide me back, and having that positive mental attitude that everything is going to work out. And this is why it's important. Remember, I told you the old me, I made decisions that operate from what? Fear. When
Yeah.
I'm able to do that and let go, I am not operating from fear. I am operating from abundance. So
Wow.
it's so much deeper than just giving the money to the church or whoever. It's the way I look at it is just me doing my job as a human being on earth.
Giving.
The giving and receiving, and
Yeah.
understand that's just a natural law that's going to always happen if you allow
Very,
it.
very nice. Very, very nice. So well said. So let me just ask you then about, you know, about how can one set a worthy goal to create a life of harmony? I mean, tell me about that.
So this is a beautiful saying from Earl Nightingale that I absolutely love. He says, "Success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal." A
Say it one more
pro-
time.
Success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Wow.
You know, you said that earlier. You have a direction when you look at your goal. You have a direction, and then the more you walk, it gets more crystallized, right?
Hmm.
So it's a progressive ideal. And that really changed my perception on what success is, because I used to think being successful, I have to be a CEO of a major company, I have to have millions and millions of dollars, right? That's my old mentality. But I was like, it's a progressive realization of a worthy ideal, my worthy ideal. So that's the first step.
Mm.
What is your worthy ideal?
Mm.
Not what TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, the news tell you what it is.
Hmm.
What is your worthy ideal? And let's start from
Mm.
there. Because once
Mm.
you know what your ideal is, right? You start writing your movie. I want you to show up as that person before the physical is manifested. And then you be your producer. What I mean by that, because I used to be in the producerial role.
Yeah. What does a producer do in this context?
So in this context, right, just think about the life that you want to live in your way, and then figure out how much that's going to be, and just start making decisions from there. Sorry, my son just came in.
It's quite all right. And so producer goes out and finds he's waving.
Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. So so producer goes and gets the resources as well, right?
Yes. You go out, you get the resources.
Pulls it together.
You use your creative mind. Everything
Mm-hmm.
is creative, and you pull it together. Yeah, and you control the budget. So that's when the producing comes in, and you go
Wow.
and make it, right? So you have the creative part, you have the producing part. The producing is still the creative, but now you have a direction, right? Because one thing that I've learned, when you're in a job, you get a paycheck, right?
Yes.
But the paycheck is really coming to you from your value, right? If you're
Interesting.
irreplaceable, your paycheck is going to go up. That's just the law. Because if you leave, they're going to want to keep you. People are going to want to take you, right? And
Yes.
if you're an entrepreneur and a business owner, then the sky's the limit, right?
Yes.
If you
Yes.
activate your ideas,
That's true. Mm-hmm.
can you turn that down? Mommy's live right now. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it.
When you activate your when you figure out the life that you want, and you have all these ideas, the key is you got to start taking action. Everyone has ideas. Everyone has ideas.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah.
it's taking those action, which requires risk. And many people don't want to take that risk because
Fear.
right? I used to be that way until I lost everything, and now I do take risk because I feel like it's riskier for me to stay in the comfort zone now.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so this is my burning desire that kept me going.
What is his name?
Kayla, you want to come over here? You could take your clips up. People are really watching me right now. This is streaming live.
You're on TV, and all your friends are watching you.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, right. I'm not buying
You want
it.
to come by? Or can you give mommy like 10 more minutes? Okay. Anyways, he's a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Right.
Many of us have been there and done that. No, that's really fantastic. So, Lillian, tell us, just tell us a little bit about what you do now. You're a peak performance coach. What is that?
So sorry.
Sorry.
So I work with entrepreneurs now to activate their human potential. I am a certified consultant at the Proctor Gallagher Institute. So Bob Proctor.
That's Bob Proctor. Yeah.
Bob Proctor's methodology. So everything that I shared with you right now is from his program.
Yeah.
Full transparency, his program is the one that I went through because I found his video on YouTube when I needed help when I was doing my research.
Mm-hmm.
He is the one. And the thing that I'm so sorry. The thing that really the one sentence he said to me at the time that I need to hear is if you tell me what you want, I'll show you how to get it. Your success is guaranteed.
Wow.
That was a very powerful statement because you don't hear that.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy. I've read a lot of his stuff, and he's certainly one of those guys that definitely, he's been around a little bit too. He's been around for a while, so he's really kind of stood the test of time, like Tony Robbins and others, So that's fascinating, the type of work that you do. So listen, I want to ask others if anybody has any questions. Can I ask people if they have any questions for you, and they might throw them up here online? And in the meantime, not often people do ask questions, so I'm not so much expecting, but I invite anybody to ask Lillian here a question about peak performance or the things that we've been talking about in life. But in the meantime, would you just share with our audience, where they can find you, where they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so a few ways. So the easiest way is on my Instagram. So it's Lillian Victoria Official. Lillian double L, so LILLIAN VICTORIA.
Yes.
You could also find me at my email, which is info@awesomeness.lifestyle.com.
Awesomenesslifestyle.com.
Yes,
Very
we all
good.
deserve to live an awesomest lifestyle.
I
It's
love that.
that easy.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Well, listen, goodness, I appreciate so much that you came and shared your life, the good times, the hard times, the tough times, but then also really offered some just great insight and ideas for how people can rebuild their life, can become their own producer, their own director, their own actor in their own life story. And I just think the message in and of itself is in part about taking control of your life and making some things happen for yourself. So I
Yeah.
thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time here.
Thank you for
Okay.
having me.
No, listen, the pleasure is mine. I'd love to stay in touch with you. And again, I will make sure that the information you just gave are in the show notes. People will know where to find them and they can reach out to you. And I would encourage them to do that. So it's obvious that you have got the goods, as they say, you see. So
Thank you so much. Yes, we must be in touch.
we will. Thank you so very much, Lillian. By the way, Lillian's kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it this way. It's a bit of an old school name, isn't it? You don't hear Lillian that often anymore.
Yeah,
But I love the name. I mean, this has been your name all your life.
since birth. On my birth
Wow.
certificate. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all
That's
Lillian
ver-
on my life.
that's very it is. You just don't hear it that moment. But now it's become such a unique name. Whereas, in years past it was sort of a normal name. I love it. I mean, it's in fact I have an aunt whose name was Lillian, and I love it, when I hear the name, it just rings. So, anyways, listen, thank you so very much, and I will look forward to staying in touch. And God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so very much. So, everybody, there you have it. Lillian Victoria, or Lillian Victory, or as Rick says, Lillian Victorious. We're going to rename this lady. I mean, she's just, it's it's amazing. But listen, this is all raw. Her son was there. We're in the South here. Family's invited. We don't have any issues with that. So, loved seeing her son. Which I could have gotten him to say a word or two. But in any event, listen, I just want to encourage you all out there, as I always do. The podcast is grow from the inside out, and everything that Lillian and I just talked about is that concept that when you're dealing with some difficult times, I just want to sort of quickly, very briefly review what she said. Step number one is, go get some help. That can be from a therapist. It can be from a friend. It could be from a coach. There are so many different ways that you can get help. But the key is well, one, of course, I've done therapy before, but when I went into therapy, I was very well aware. I worked with therapists, side by side with therapists in the military and this, that, and the other. And I always kind of knew that sort of, there's some really good therapists, and then there's some who are off the charts crazy. I mean, they need more help than they give. So, but what I learned is you go find a good one. You go find one that resonates with you. And if it's not a therapist, it's a coach or it's a friend who can just sit with you and help you, as I like to say, think, help draw out of you some ideas and give you this renewed spirit. And so that's first thing. Go get some help, and then begin to, just as Lillian so well stated, rethink, reimagine, start to just ask yourself simple questions like, if it were 10 years from now, what would I want it to be? What would I want my life to be? What would it, like she said, the five sentences, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? And start to really, just put a spark in your head. And another thing that she mentioned about, about sort of, I guess you could say, manifesting your thoughts. Stephen Covey also used to say that everything is created twice, once in your mind and then in reality. And that everything starts with an idea. And so, so that's a huge key. What's your idea? What's your idea? Start there, and then begin to make the motions. Maybe again, if it's not completely change your environment, make some changes to it. She kind of mentioned to it. It might be, changing your environment doesn't mean moving from LA to Taiwan. It might be, it might be changing the people that you surround yourself with. It might be going to a coffee shop and spending some time there and getting to know other people and just hearing ideas. I mean, the whole concept of changing your environment is so critical. However you choose to do that. I meant to say this while we were talking, that about perspective and about changing environment. I know when I was a kid, I know many of you have experienced this. I know my daughter's experienced it, my son's experienced. Many of us experience this idea when you first fall in love with somebody and they just seem so freaking incredible. And, everybody else around you knows that this person's an axe murderer, but you're so in love. You're so involved. You're so immersed in your thinking and your beliefs about who this person is. And so then let's say that you finally realize, this is not working out. And you step back and like a month or 3 months later, you go, why didn't I see that? This person is a psychopath. And everybody was telling me, but I couldn't see it. You see, that's the nature of what happens when you change your environment a little bit. And again, sometimes it's just stepping away from something and trying to see it from a different perspective or whatever the case might be. So listen, thank you all for being a part of this, and thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for your comments. Rick, I appreciate you, and wish you all well, and do reach out. And I'm going to sign off here. Thank you so much, and God bless. I'm out.